What's going on, everybody? Welcome in to the member stream. Starting a little late tonight, but we are here. As far as I know, Arthur is back in bed. It's just me and him at home tonight. So he was asleep and then he woke up. I guess he had like a bad dream or something and he was very upset. He went back down. So hopefully he's asleep. If the screen just turns off and I disappear for a minute, that is probably why. But hopefully he's all good and he's down for the night. I see you here in the chat, Scotty. Go Sixers. I'll hit you with a go Sixers. I don't know what the Sixers are up to, but good for them. Carson, what's up? Welcome in to the stream. Nico, I can't believe you would even ask me this question because you know exactly what the answer is. Just trying to ruin my night, I guess. My playoff best ball teams are not good. I'd actually be in a decent spot had the Rams won because I got two good teams through with Rams and Patriots. That would be fairly unique in the way too early wild card, which has like a $25,000 prize up top. I was one of only like 7 teams that had Drake May, Puka, Kyron, and Hunter Henry or something like that. So I had pretty good teams that got through. As it stands, I have 2 teams left. One of them has like no quarterback and like 2 Patriots or something. The other one has Drake May, Kenneth Walker, and Stephon Diggs, which is not going to be enough to break into any of the major payout tiers. So I will be losing money on playoff best ball this year. I will not learn any lessons, and I will do the same thing next year, obviously. But what we're here for tonight is not playoff best ball or any kind of best ball. What we're here to do is kind of the same deal as last week. We looked at all 32 backfields across the NFL and how they are currently constructed. Who are the free agents? How do we see things shaking out with each team? I'm going to try to do the same thing with receivers, both wide receivers and tight ends. Tonight, I have created a chart with all of the depth charts. I'm hoping you'll be able to see it. There's a few more columns than the backfield one, so it might be a little bit smaller, but hopefully you can see it. Either way, I'll talk through it. We'll go top to bottom here, talk about the best landing spots, the worst landing spots for each of these players. We'll talk about free agents. We'll talk about what I think these teams might do. At times I may need to go and reference the salary cap information on these teams. Let me see if I can just pull that up on my phone so I can see it. All right, here we go. Because I don't have it on the chart this time. All right, so we're going to jump into this. Looks like we've got a smaller crew tonight, at least not as many people active in the chat. But I'm here and I will persist. Here is our chart. We've got wide receivers 1 through 4. We've got tight ends 1 and 2. Each of these teams has 2 color designations. These are landing spots for receivers and tight ends. We've got some cut or trade candidates labeled with blue. Papa Chernobyl, appreciate this. Definitely feeling much better. Honestly, you hear me coughing a little bit. I literally just like choked on water a little while ago. Otherwise, I'm totally fine and ready to rock. Alexander, what is up? Gabe is here. Appreciate you. Let's dive into the chart here. We'll start at the top with the Buffalo Bills in the AFC East. We're looking at a lot of the usual suspects: Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, Tyrell Shavers, who tore his ACL in the playoffs, unfortunately, and Josh Palmer, who did go on season-ending IR, but it was just an ankle injury. He should be fine for, off-season stuff. And then they have Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox in the tight end room. I should probably highlight Dawson Knox in that same shade of blue because he is probably a cut candidate as well. He's a pretty high cap number. They've got a little bit of turnover at the coaching position. Michael Douglas, these charts are just made by me. I have been doing a backfield version of this for a few years, just for my own benefit and to share with people, that follow my content. But I've been trying to refine it a little bit, and I decided this year I was going to make one for receivers and tight ends. So this is just a Google sheet that I made. I went through all of the depth charts and the list of free agents and just sort of slotted them all in there. And then I arbitrarily decided, how I would rank these landing spots. You guys can definitely let me know if you think that these color-coded labels are wrong. This is just my initial look at it. So I have the Bills in green here as one of the best landing spots because we have Khalil Shakir. He's a slot wide receiver. He's always going to have his role, but he's not a significant obstacle if we were to see, a legitimate alpha wide receiver get in there. Keon Coleman is not good. Tyrell Shavers, and Josh Palmer, these are role players. These are not obstacles. So, Gabe, I think the easy answer to this question would be Stephon Diggs, the best wide receiver that he's had. And if we were to get Josh Allen, another prime Steph Diggs, I think that player would be very good in fantasy. I don't buy into the narrative that, the Bills spread the ball around too much, that they can't have an alpha wide receiver. That's based on the personnel. When they had an alpha wide receiver, Stephon Diggs was a top 5 fantasy finisher multiple years. It's just that they haven't had anybody, right? Like they've tried to get a couple players in there, but mostly it's been old washed guys or draft picks that didn't pan out. So, it's still a great landing spot. Guys, I see the compliments there in the chat. I appreciate it. Just trying to create, some useful diagrams here because it's a lot to take in, and it's helpful to me too, thinking about how to rank free agents, thinking about where players might end up. It's kind of getting a jump start on the draft season and the free agency period. Brian Thomas Jr. to the Bills. Who says no other than Sean McDermott? Wondering why Bean makes a move that makes sense once he's fired. Yeah, I think that would be a fantastic fit for sure. They have players that can operate over the middle of the field with Shakir and Kincaid. So having a boundary wide receiver that's actually theoretically very good, that would be a great fit. I don't know if they would do that. I don't know if they have the capital to make that make sense, but Brian Thomas, you look at the free agent pool, just draw attention to that. It's not a very we just don't see super strong wide receivers get to free agency all the time, but all in all, not a bad free agent group. George Pickens at the top, obviously. I expect him to return to Dallas. I think that's nearly a lock. And then the rest of these guys are, they're not necessarily ordered by by value or anything. I actually had Mike Evans on here twice, so let me fix that. We have Jawan Jennings, we have Wan'Dale Robinson, Mike Evans, Alec Pierce, Keenan Allen, Romeo Dobbs, Rashid Shaheed, Debo Samuel, some lesser guys here in Jalen Naylor, John Mechie, Jahan Dotson, Calvin Austin, Hollywood Brown. I think Alec Pierce would be a fantastic addition if he actually can get away from the Colts. The Bills, unfortunately, don't have a ton of cap space right now. They're $5 million over the cap, but they probably have some contracts they can shed. Romeo Dobbs would be like a lesser fit, but I mean a lesser version, but also a fit as that guy that can at least functionally play X wide receiver. Mike Evans would be fun if he wants to leave Tampa Bay and try to jump onto a contender. I think that would make a lot of sense. So there are some guys in this market. Even Rashid Shaheed, I think, would be a good fit for this team. They need some speed and they need downfield ability. So those are some guys that would make sense. I would be shocked if they don't add something to this wide receiver room, whether that's in the draft or in free agency. I don't know. There are plenty of wide receiver options in the draft they could hit on in the second round. Right now, there's roughly 12 wide receivers on mock draft database that are projected inside the top 2 rounds. So a lot of guys that could come off the board early. We'll look at the Dolphins next. Right now they have Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, and then basically nothing. Malik Washington, Nick Westbrook-Akine. Tyreek Hill is going to be cut by the Dolphins this offseason. It's just a matter of when. I have this labeled as an okay landing spot. There's obviously opportunity outside of Miami. Outside of Waddle in Miami. There's an opening there for another receiver. The problem is we don't know who the quarterback is. I kind of doubt that whoever the quarterback is for the Dolphins next year is a guy that we're really going to want 2 wide receivers attached to. That's why I've got this labeled as orange. Just an okay spot. Theoretically, there are routes available. There are targets available. In practice, who is throwing them the ball? I really don't know. Malik Willis sounds like the most likely candidate right now. I'm not very tempted by Malik Willis's wide receiver 2. If you are, more power to you. The New England Patriots are next. They have Stephon Diggs under contract. They have Kayshon Boutte. They have Matt Collins. That's a totally, serviceable group of guys. We've seen that group of guys get them to the Super Bowl this year. But I doubt that they are content with that group. Plenty of opportunities to add to it. I'm actually not sure how all these guys have been deployed. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Diggs moves around a little bit. He gets into the slot some. I think he gets, he can kind of still do a little bit of everything. I think Kayshon, if I'm not mistaken, is playing a good bit of X with Hollins playing kind of flanker. I think Diggs, I do think Diggs has some left in the tank. He has really shown the ability to take over a game from time to time. And then, like you said, other times he disappears. I don't know if it's necessarily as the season goes along, because he's kind of had these big games that have just popped up. I don't know if it's just when they have a good matchup, they'll go to him, but he can't get open all the time, or, he's not necessarily matchup proof. I'm not sure. I did miss on Kyle Williams there. That is a good call. I did forget Kyle Williams. To be fair, I think the Patriots also forgot about Kyle Williams. So, give me a break there. Man, I hate that I'm coughing right now. I literally just swallowed water down the wrong pipe. It won't go away. So I think the Patriots would be a good spot, because I think Kayshon is solid. He hasn't really demonstrated that he's a high-end target earner yet. He's more of a situational, deep threat, red zone threat. Diggs is obviously falling off. He's going to be 32, 33 next year. Hollins is a role player. Kyle Williams is likely nothing in the NFL. If we were to get a legitimately good wide receiver there, that player could immediately consolidate a lot of targets, and it's a great quarterback to be attached to as well. So if we see an early wide receiver selection there, if we see, I don't know who on the list of free agents would really, other than Pickens, there's not really anybody that would immediately distance themselves from the rest of this group. But you can definitely be interested if any of the main free agents sign with New England. The Jets are another one of those teams where there's routes available. There's an opportunity to be seized, but again, who is throwing the ball? We have Garrett Wilson coming back. He's going to be the alpha. He's going to get 25 to 30% of the targets right off the bat. We've got A.D. Mitchell there. And then I wouldn't consider any of their other wide receivers to be particularly notable. A.D. Mitchell's pretty interesting if he can survive the offseason without any other major additions. He really did consolidate a lot of that passing game around him late in the year, with the caveat being his competition was John Mechie and Mason Taylor and Alan Lazard and some other scrubby wide receivers whose names I can't think of. It would be a whole different thing to do that with Garrett Wilson also on the field and maybe another wide receiver added. But A.D. Mitchell has a very intriguing skill set, been a good separator in the league. He is a guy that I'm intrigued by. It's just same old problem with the Jets where even if he is good, what are we going to get from it? Probably not much. I have neglected the tight end position here. That's my bad. Let me just return to the Dolphins for a second, who basically have no tight ends of consequence under contract. Darren Waller is a free agent. If he plays football next year, I assume it would be for the Dolphins, but I don't know that for sure. I don't know if he's going to play football next year, but this would be a good spot for a tight end. Like, I think because the threshold for a tight end to be relevant is just lower than a wide receiver. So like if they have Waddle and a tight end, both of those players can probably pay off in fantasy as opposed to a second wide receiver. So that is a good spot for there to be a tight end. And if it's a true wide tight end that can play every down, there's a ton of opportunity available. I have the Patriots and Jets both labeled as bad spots for tight ends. And there are a lot of bad spots, to be honest. It's just, they've got Hunter Henry in New England. He's going to be there next year unless they go out and get some kind of stud. They draft, I don't know, Kenyon Sadiq in the first round, somebody that's like expected to be a focal point in the passing game. You have to assume that any other tight end is just going to be stuck behind Henry, such a reliable veteran, for at least another year. Mason Taylor is not really anything special at tight end, but he's fine. He had second round capital. He's a young guy. He's going to eat up routes and snaps. So we don't really want another tight end going there to create a big log jam at the position. Getting into the AFC West, though, we have the Denver Broncos up first. Their wide receiver room is pretty packed. Cortland Sutton, Troy Franklin, Pat Bryant, Marvin Mims. I do have them labeled as a good spot, though, because what you have there is you have a good offensive coach, you have a competent quarterback, and other than Sutton, who is going to be 31 next year, is he's on the decline, obviously. Still had some great games this year. Still clearly the best wide receiver for the Broncos. None of these other guys are particularly intimidating to me. I don't think any of them are big-time target earners in their own right. Peyton does a good job of kind of rotating these guys around and putting them in spots to succeed. But if we had a legitimate alpha wide receiver in Denver, all of these players would simply cease to exist. Like, anybody that's trying to argue that, wide receiver X is going to be limited because, aren't you worried about Troy Franklin? Aren't you worried about Marvin Mims? I think that would be pretty unserious analysis. Sure, it's not a great spot for another player of that caliber. Like, if we were to send Romeo Doubs there, I don't think he would stand out. But if we sent George Pickens there, or we sent, Jordan Tyson there or whatever, I would not be worried about those ancillary pieces. And so I view it as a good spot for a potential wide receiver. The tight end room is wide open. Evan Ingram is a one-dimensional player who is probably more of a detriment to an offense at this point than anything. Like, he cannot block. He's not explosive. He's not going to make plays after the catch. He's just occupying space right now. I assume he'll be cut. If he's not cut, he will be easily usurped by any incoming free agent. And this is a pretty loaded free agency class, by the way. We have, these are definitely not in order, but we have Kyle Pitts. We have David Njoku, Isaiah Likely, Dallas Goedert, Tyler Higbee, Darren Waller, Cade Otton, Chiga Okonkwo, even Jake Tonjes. He'll probably go back to the 49ers, but it's a loaded group of tight ends in free agency. Definitely could see somebody landing like Isaiah Likely in Denver. So that would be interesting. And Denver does have a good amount of cap space, $28 million. They don't have a lot of needs on the defensive side of the ball. I don't know if they have a lot of expiring contracts, but they don't have a lot of needs on the offensive line. This is a team where you could see them going for a luxury free agent like a Kyle Pitts, who's like a younger, souped up Evan Ingram, that could be another weapon for the offense. I could totally see something like that from Sean Payton, who really does like his kind of non-traditional player archetypes that he can use like a Swiss Army knife, that he can use in that Joker role, move around. So I could see Kyle Pitts in Denver, to be honest. I think that could make some sense. Isaiah Likely, kind of a similar type of player. Alexander, what would I do with Kittle, Gadsden, and Njoku and one tight end? I guess you're saying 1 point tight end premium PPR. I mean, I just don't know what those guys are going to go for in those leagues. I'm very hesitant to move tight ends in 1.0 tight end premium because the threshold of production for them to be really useful is just so low, and people usually don't want to pay up. Oh, no tight end premium? Oh, okay. Just PPR. Okay, well then that changes things. I wouldn't value any of these players very highly in non-tight end premium. I would sell David Njoku for a third-round pick in that format. Gadsden, I would sell for an early second if you can get it. And then Kittle, he's kind of a wild card. I'd be looking for, if you could get like a 2027 second for him, I could see doing that. Or no, it's not it's not 1.0 tight end premium Goldhorn. It's no tight end premium. Yeah, so I wouldn't really value any of these guys very highly in non-tight end premium. It's just so easy to replace tight ends. So it's just hard to get really attached to them. Like I said, 2027 second for Kittle is fine with me. Like, he's 33 years old. He's coming off the Achilles. We don't know when he'll play. We don't know how effective he'll be. He's not really going to give you much of an advantage without that premium. Gadsden in a one quarterback league, no tight end premium. Man, that's nasty. Probably Gadsden. It's like 202 is already pretty weak in this class. You take away Mendoza, you take away potentially Ty Simpson as a guy that would go before that 204 pick. I don't know. I mean, I guess that's pretty even. If you already have a good tight end, I would take the pick. If you don't, and you're like searching for answers at tight end, like your other tight end is like Hunter Henry, I'd probably just keep him and just see if he can emerge and be your next guy at that position. That's how I see it. All right. Kansas City Chiefs are next. Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, Jalen Royals are the notable wide receivers under contract. They have Noah Gray at tight end. Travis Kelce is actually a free agent. I did not put him on the list, which is kind of funny. I guess I just already see Travis Kelce as being retired. I do think he's going to retire, but who's to say? I'll say this. If Travis Kelce doesn't retire, obviously he will be back with the Chiefs. He will be their main tight end. If he's not back with the Chiefs, this is an amazing spot for a tight end to land. And there are tons and tons of options. Now, the Chiefs don't have any cap space. They are literally the most over the cap team in the league. They are $54 million over the cap. So I don't think they're going to go out and make a big splash at tight end. I don't think they're going to get Kyle Pitts. They're not going to get Isaiah Likely. They're not going to do that. This is a spot probably for a rookie tight end or a very cheap, like maybe they can afford a Chigakonkwo or something. But either way, whatever tight end lands there is going to get a bump. And that will be very interesting to watch. Michael Douglas, if a question relates to the chart, you can feel free to throw a question in there. Like I really don't mind. I can multitask. I can jump back and forth. It's no problem. I really don't see them drafting Sadiq. Like, they have the 9th overall pick. I think that would be a pretty absurd reach, especially when one of these great wide receivers is going to be on the board there at 9. So I don't think that'll happen. When they were projected to pick like in the 20s, I felt like that made more sense. I personally would not spend a first round pick on a tight end that looks like Kenyon Sadiq. I don't think he's the type of player that warrants a first round selection. He's kind of like a Dalton Kincaid move tight end type of guy. Doesn't even really have the college production to back it up. So I think that would be a bad pick at 9, but certainly if you went that high, like he would be very, very valuable in rookie drafts. But yeah, I have wide receiver here labeled as good. Xavier Worthy didn't show us much last year. He was playing with a torn labrum. So take that for what it is. He could definitely bounce back this year, but it's also possible he's just very much a secondary wide receiver. He doesn't really bring a whole lot to the table. He's more of a gadget guy, whatever. Jalen Royals is probably a complete zero. He didn't even play last year. Rashee Rice, maybe he's suspended. Maybe he's cut by the team. Maybe he's in jail. Maybe he's totally fine. I don't know. But if they were to invest at 9 in Jordan Tyson, Mekhi Lemon, Carnell Tate, that player would, in my mind, leapfrog Rashee Rice, who is a fine player at what he does, but he's very limited, and probably a guy that they are looking to deprioritize due to his volatility. I just don't see him getting a long-term extension with this team. The Las Vegas Raiders have Trey Tucker, Jack Bech, Dante Thornton under contract. One of the worst wide receiver rooms in the NFL as it stands today. They are obviously a great spot for a wide receiver to land. For the sake of my Bowers and Genty shares, I'm kind of fine with this thing staying uncrowded, but you do want some competent wide receivers to kind of take a little bit of heat off. So the Raiders have a ton of cap space. I could see them being the team that throws a bunch of money at somebody like Alec Pierce. If he was to get into free agency, I could see them bringing in somebody like Deebo Samuel, who's like mostly washed, but would give them at least a veteran presence that they can rely on. I could see them, resetting the market with like a Wan'Dale Robinson or Jawan Jennings, like giving that type of player more money than they deserve because they have a bunch of money and they really should spend a lot of that money. And they're bringing in a 101 quarterback. You want to give him as many weapons as you can. So honestly, I think it would be wise to overpay and get a couple of usable wide receivers in the building than to just like sit on all this money. They have $89 million in cap space. So they're just not going to be able to spend all that, especially when they're not paying a quarterback any type of massive deal this year. So look for a wide receiver to land on the Raiders. I'll say if by some miracle the Cowboys let Pickens walk, which again is not going to happen, I think he would be an absolute lock to be on the Titans or the Raiders because they both have bonkers cap space and young quarterbacks that need weapons. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, somebody's going to land there in free agency. I feel pretty strongly about that. We obviously do not want any tight ends there. Bowers and Mayer is more than enough. The Los Angeles Chargers, good young wide receiver room, good mix of skill sets here with Ladd, QJ, Trey Harris, and then they've got a Rondé Gatson in the tight end room. So really young players all around. Quentin Johnston is entering the last year of his deal. If Keenan Allen decides to not retire, he's probably going to be back on the Chargers, which is really just annoying for more than anything. But yeah, otherwise, you should expect a bounce back for this passing game with Slater healthy, with Alt healthy, with Mike McDaniel there. I mean, I think Mike McDaniel is just going to adapt to the personnel. So people say like, oh, he's a run-heavy offensive coordinator. I don't necessarily know that that's true. He's obviously creative in the run game, but I think he's also smart enough to know what he has in Justin Herbert. And I don't think he's necessarily just going to force a run-heavy approach when he has Herbert. It's very different than having Tua. So I think it's just good for the offense to have a guy like that in charge, and definitely looking forward to seeing what that team looks like. In the AFC North, starting with the Ravens, we have Flowers, Bateman, and Devontae Walker. Pretty bare bones wide receiver room, to be honest. I've only got it as an orange, as an okay spot, because Lamar has just never been a high volume passer. We're already not necessarily satisfied with what we get out of Zay Flowers on a regular basis. I don't think we want any type of high-end wide receiver landing with the Ravens. It's just probably not a recipe for success. And then tight ends I have as a bad spot. They're paying Mark Andrews. He got an extension. I don't think he's any good anymore, but he's going to play at least half of the snaps for sure. So, yeah, it is what it is. Question here. Is it time to buy JJ McCarthy because of these reports that KOC hates him? I don't think that you're going to pry him away from whoever's been holding him this long for a late 2026 second. But yes, I would buy for that. I would happily buy for that price if it was possible. I don't think it is possible, but I would do it. Cincinnati Bengals, obviously not a spot where we need a wide receiver to go. They have Chase and Higgins. They've got their role players in Yoshi Voss and Mitchell Tinsley already under contract. This wide receiver room is stocked up. They have no tight ends at all. I don't think Noah Fant is still under contract. I know Mike Gesicki is not under contract. I'm not sure why I didn't put Noah Fant in the free agent list. He's probably worth mentioning. I don't feel the need to mention Mike Gesicki, but yeah, they don't have any tight ends. Whatever tight end goes there is obviously going to be a third option. So not necessarily a high upside spot for a tight end, but a good spot where they could run a lot of routes. There would be contingent upside there, high ceiling passing game. You see the vision. Cleveland Browns. I have in yellow here. What's the question? Joe Alt for the Chargers, right tackle. He missed about 2/3 of the season. The Chargers have two tackles that are like Pro Bowl / All Pro caliber in Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt. Rashawn Slater missed all of this past season, and then Joe Alt was in and out, but he missed everything from like week 9 on. And that's part of why we saw a lot of the passing game for the Chargers really fall off a cliff. So getting both of those tackles back healthy is huge. Oh, Eric All. Okay. Bengals tight end on IR. Eric All. Yeah. Yes. Okay. That's what we're talking about. I feel like I'm playing telephone or something. All right. Yes. Eric All is a tight end that was kind of an interesting college prospect. He had a bunch of injuries. He got on the field for like a few games, suffered another injury. So he's going to be like 26 years old playing in his 4th career game. But he might be back at some point, and he could be their main tight end. I think they may have re-signed like Tanner Hudson or something. He's mostly just a blocker. But anyway, the Cleveland Browns are up next. This is a good spot for a wide receiver. It's just Jerry Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, Isaiah Bond. I don't think any of these players are particularly good. Certainly none of them are an obstacle to any legitimate target earning threat. Harold Fannon's the best target earner, best receiver on the team. So we don't need any tight ends going to Cleveland. I do like the Todd Monken hire for Harold Fannon's sake. He's done good work with Brock Bowers previously at Georgia. He's done good work with the Ravens tight ends, just that it's been split between the two of them. But yeah, I like this hire for Harold Fannin. It's a good spot for him to be in. We don't need any other tight ends there. Then we have the Steelers as the last AFC North team, and pretty much just DK Metcalf under contract at wide receiver. So it's a good landing spot. We don't know who the quarterback's going to be yet, but obviously wide open for routes. I would guess they draft somebody. They probably bring in a free agent of some kind. I could see them re-signing Calvin Austin. I could see them bringing in somebody out of this free agency class. Their cap situation is surprisingly good. $45 million in cap space. So they could definitely sign somebody. Now, Mike McCarthy at head coach, probably not a good move for the franchise, but I'd expect this offense to have, a decent floor depending on the quarterback. Is he going to bring Aaron Rodgers back for another season? I don't know. If he doesn't, we're back to the same problems a lot of other teams have. Who are the options out there? I could see the Steelers being a team that makes a move for somebody like Kirk Cousins, just locking in another year of mediocrity, older quarterback, just sort of kick the can down the road. That would be a totally fine move for the fantasy weapons there. So something to monitor. The Houston Texans, very loaded up wide receiver room again. Nico Collins. We have the two rookies going into year two, Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. Then we have Tank Dell, who does still exist. He's still in there. They have Xavier Hutchinson on the roster too. They're only losing Christian Kirk, who is almost definitely going to walk. But yeah, they've got plenty of bodies here. Collins and Higgins figure to be the two main outside wide receivers. Jalen Noel could absorb the slot role that Christian Kirk is leaving behind, but you'll see Higgins get into the slot with Hutchinson outside. You'll see Tank Dell, if he gets back healthy, he'll take that slot role. It's really hard for me to imagine Tank Dell getting back to form just with how bad that injury was, but definitely a guy that's worth stashing. He actually has an ADP in early best ball contests, so people are willing to take a shot on him. Dalton Schultz is the tight end. Maybe I shouldn't call this a bad spot. Maybe it's just like an okay spot. Dalton Schultz is going to be like 30 years old. You could definitely see a tight end getting in there to be kind of the heir apparent to Dalton Schultz. I guess it's just already crowded with all the wide receivers where you don't necessarily expect a tight end there to go totally crazy. And it hasn't been a great passing environment overall, but Dalton Schultz was pretty serviceable this year. Indianapolis Colts in yellow here. Good landing spot. I think they're going to bring back Alec Pierce, to be honest. But they have Michael Pittman, Josh Downs right now. And then they have Tyler Warren, obviously, at tight end. That's their full-time go-to tight end option. So we're not looking for or expecting any tight ends of consequence to land in Indianapolis. But yeah, I mean, Alec Pierce going back is the most sensible thing. I've heard it said that the Colts could actually try to get rid of Michael Pittman because they can save a lot of money on his contract to bring back Alec Pierce, who is probably the better player at this point, is a younger player. So I would say I think that would be smart for them to do. Whether they actually do it is a different question. Maybe they can manage to bring all of them back. I'm not really sure. They are $34 million in the clear with cap space. So they could potentially bring back both guys. I do think it's most likely that Pierce is a Colt as opposed to anything else. Is Kirk a free agent? Christian Kirk is. He should be on this list, but he's not. And if you meant Kirk Cousins, he's not yet, but he is going to be. He's going to be released by the Falcons. Yeah, so the Colts, I think we can pretty much expect Daniel Jones back. They've talked about Daniel Jones like they're building the team around him, even though he's not under contract yet. I think he's going to be back. It makes sense for both parties for him to be back. So, with Steichen there, Jonathan Taylor, Daniel Jones, hopefully he gets back healthy, but it should be a relatively high floor for this passing game. The Jaguars, again, one of the better wide receiver rooms in the league right now with Brian Thomas, Jacoby Myers, Parker Washington, Travis Hunter. It pains me to list Hunter fourth there, but that's just how they ended the season. Brian Thomas, definitely he's going to be a topic of much speculation this offseason, as he should be. He absolutely could get traded. I know the comments from Liam Cohn, like, oh, he's definitely part of the plan. That's what coaches say, and it could definitely be true. But he could also be traded. He did not show the best effort last year. He did not show to be the best fit for the offense. It's not at all impossible that he could be moved for a significant return. I think there could be teams out there that are willing to move a second round pick for him. The Jaguars, with the pieces they have, could be willing to accept that. So we'll see. I would say it's definitely less than 50% that he gets traded, but I'd say it's more. I'd put it at like more than 10%, maybe 20%, maybe 25% chance that he gets moved to another team. If that was to happen, that would definitely be a very, very bullish signal for Travis Hunter. As it stands right now, we can really only guess at how these guys are going to be deployed. But I think Parker Washington was their best wide receiver down the stretch last year. I think he's probably the best fit for what they want to do with this offense. Jacoby Myers just got the big extension. It's really hard to see where the routes are going to come for Travis Hunter, which is why I ended up moving him down a little bit, because it's a zero-sum game, right? I think Thomas at X, Myers at flanker, and Washington in the slot is kind of the most natural deployment here, and you'll see Hunter rotate in for each of those guys and play different positions. But yeah, that's how it looks right now. Brenton Strange is a good tight end as well, which further kind of muddies the target totem pole there. But he's a capable full-time tight end for the Jaguars, so we don't need anybody else there. The Tennessee Titans, another contender for worst wide receiver room. Calvin Ridley, Chim DK, Alec Ayomanor as the notable wide receivers. Ridley could be cut, could be whatever. He fractured his leg last year. That's not a good thing to do as a football player. It's not really cap related. They have as much cap as they could possibly need. So it would just be like whether they want to let him go to a new team or if he's not going to be healthy or whatever. He could be back. I think that they would be wise to throw some money at anybody in free agency that's interested. I don't care if that's Romeo Doubs, Rashid Shaheed. Just get somebody capable in the building, because Cam Ward needs help. Now, it's not just wide receiver. Obviously, they need to invest in the offensive line as well, and they need to improve the defense. But they have a top 5 pick in the draft. I've heard people say Carnell Tate could be the pick there. I understand that. He could definitely step in and be their X receiver. But sorry, hold on. I just trying to figure out if I hear my son coming downstairs, if he's awake or something. Okay, it was actually just my wife getting home, so not a murderer. And Arthur is still asleep, to the best of my knowledge. All right, sorry. Let me pick this back up with the Titans here. Thoughts on Ward with Dable? Should I be worried with him? No, you should. I don't think you should be worried. I wouldn't view Dable as a negative. I wouldn't view Dable as a negative for a quarterback. I mean, we haven't really seen. I don't think Dable was an amazing head coach or anything, but we haven't seen him be a detriment to quarterbacks. I think Jackson Dart played better with Dable as his coach than he did afterward. And I mean, Dable certainly, I don't think he deserves all the credit for Josh Allen becoming Josh Allen, but he was there for the development of Josh Allen. So I would view the Dable hiring as a positive. I think he is a good offensive coordinator. I wouldn't want Cam Ward to be the QB1 on my dynasty team, but I think he's an interesting investment and could definitely turn out to be good. But yeah, they need some weapons is my point. That's why they're in green. I've also labeled them as an okay spot for a tight end. I think I would change that to good. I'm not really convinced that Gunnar Helm is any kind of a threat. He seems like a capable player, capable blocker and everything. He made some plays. I'm not like sold that he is the answer at tight end yet. So we'll call that a good spot. Dallas Cowboys, moving over to the NFC side here. Dallas Cowboys in green, labeled as one of the best landing spots for a wide receiver. Obviously, I am under the assumption that George Pickens is that wide receiver. Once you put Pickens back in the picture with Lamb, they're no longer open for business. There's no room for somebody else in that passing game. It's just going to be Lamb and Pickens. If somehow Pickens was not there, they would be a prime spot for any other wide receiver that was to come in. The tight end room is pretty much set with Ferguson and Schoonmaker. Ferguson is not very good in my opinion, but he is their starter. He is under contract. He got a decent sized extension. Schoonmaker was a second round pick for them a few years ago. He is a perfectly cromulent backup. So they're pretty much set. Giants, Malik Neighbors, Darius Slayton. They have Wan'Dale Robinson set to be a free agent. I think Wan'Dale's probably going to get more money than they would want to give him on the open market. I actually think Wan'Dale ends up elsewhere. And so that makes this a pretty interesting spot for another wide receiver to come in. They could draft a wide receiver early, or they could try to sign somebody else. Neighbors, when he comes back, is a guy you're going to want to move around. So it wouldn't hurt to have somebody that can play that X wide receiver spot. Somebody like a Romeo Dobbs would be totally fine for this team. Rashid Shaheed is maybe like a better version of Darius Slayton. I don't think Mike Evans makes sense based on their team trajectory. Juwan Jennings, I could see coming in there, but yeah, definitely an opening there for a second guy. Theo Johnson is solid. Definitely not a guy they need to look to replace. I think he's totally fine and should probably just be their starter, but just calling it an okay spot. If they were to go invest in a tight end, then that player could probably usurp Theo Johnson, assuming it was somebody that was, I don't know, if they went out and got like a Kyle Pitts or something, that would become the primary receiving weapon at that tight end position. We got my Eagles next: AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, Darius Cooper. I guess we can label AJ Brown as like a cut or trade candidate, but the truth of the matter is that he's a very difficult player to move with how his contract is structured. I don't really understand how he can be on another team next year, but I know that Howie is a cap wizard. I know other people are better at this stuff than me. I still just think he's going to be back. I don't think that the Eagles are interested in losing a wide receiver that's as talented as Brown, even if he's not at his peak. But yeah, the numbers just don't really work. Devonta Smith is obviously going to be there. And then their third wide receiver right now with Jahan Dotson in free agency is Darius Cooper. And then at tight end, we currently have nobody. Dallas Goedert is a free agent. We kind of played hardball with him last year, and he wanted an extension, and he kind of held out for it, and he ended up getting a contract eventually, but I don't know, maybe this is where we part ways. I'm not sure. I would like to have him back, but he could end up elsewhere, and if that's the case, then I'd call it a good landing spot. Not great, because you already have those two wide receivers. You're not going to have a super high passing volume there, but routes are available. The offense does have a high ceiling when it's working well. So you saw Dallas Goedert catch like 10 touchdowns last year. So a good spot. Alexander, I wouldn't say stock up for Eagles after the OC signing, considering who we brought in. Doesn't really have any track record. It's Sean Mannion, former NFL quarterback. I believe his previous role was like a quarterback coach or pass game coordinator or something. So he's never called plays. He's never been an offensive coordinator before. So I can't really say whether it's a good thing or not. I mean, I'm fine with it as the hire, fine with taking a swing on somebody that's new as opposed to going and getting some retread failure from some other team. But, and honestly, like anything has to be better than Kevin Patullo. So in that sense, I would call it a good thing. Washington Commanders, pretty wide open on all fronts. Terry McLaurin at wide receiver is really their only guy worth mentioning. If you want, I can put Luke McCaffrey on here, but he's kind of a nothing. And then at tight end, they have Ben Sinnott and some other guys whose names I can't think of right now that don't matter. Really, Ben Sinnott's name doesn't matter either. He was just a second round pick at one point, so I thought I would mention him. The truth is the starting tight end for the Commanders is not on the roster currently. They are going to bring in somebody. I could see them bringing in some boring tight end like a Cade Otton, a Tyler Higbee. They love to sign old players. David Njoku could go there. The Commanders have tons and tons of cap space. So if they want to make a splash signing as a pass catcher and they're not thrilled with the wide receiver options, they could also go for a Kyle Pitts and Isaiah Likely. I should actually put Brandon Ayuk on this list because he is going to be released by the 49ers. I think Brandon Ayuk to the Commanders makes an absolute ton of sense because Brandon Ayuk played in college with Jaden Daniels. He was almost traded to the Commanders at some point last year. It would make a lot of sense for him to go to the Commanders, especially with the money they have available. And they desperately, desperately need to get some weapons for Jaden. But yeah, look for this team to draft a wide receiver pretty early. That's what I would expect. McLaurin is going to be 31 next year, so he'll project reasonably well for redraft, but like he is obviously not going to be there forever. He's not going to be at his peak forever. They need to start planning ahead. NFC West, we'll call it a bad spot for wide receivers. They've got Marvin Harrison. They've got Michael Wilson. It's not even a good spot for one of those two wide receivers they already have. So we definitely don't need to add any more to the mix. Trey McBride, one of the best tight ends in the game. This passing game is pretty much set. They're a much more interesting team to talk about at running back, at wide receiver and tight end. They're locked in. It's just a matter of whether it's Jacoby Brissett with a rookie quarterback, whether it's Kyler Murray back again, whether it's some other variation in the quarterback room, whatever it is, I do not expect this to be a very good football team next year, but it could be fantasy friendly if they're in a lot of negative scripts again. Los Angeles Rams, I've got them labeled as orange okay. There's a lot of moving parts here with the Rams. Puka is obviously your locked in, your wide receiver one, 30% target share. Just cut that right off the top and give it to him. They've got Devontae Adams coming back. Very much that red zone threat. He's the second target, assuming he is back with the team next year. And then after that, they've got really nothing. Kanata Mumpfield. They've got some other guys. Tutu Atwell's a free agent. And then they have at tight end, Colby Parkinson, Terrence Ferguson. So they've got plenty of pass catchers as it is. I call it an okay spot because Devontae Adams is 33 years old. There's room for somebody to come in and kind of take over for him. But I'm only putting it orange despite the McVay connection and despite Adams aging out because Stafford is also aging out. And so if you run it back next year with Adams and Stafford, good chance both of those guys leave. And so you've got an opening the following year, but you also have a quarterback vacancy to deal with. So it's an interesting spot, high ceiling spot for a wide receiver. If they were to draft somebody early, they do have an extra first round pick, but also kind of a volatile spot for a wide receiver to land. And I'm hoping Terrence Ferguson can develop into more of a full-time player. So I don't need to see any tight ends landing there. San Francisco 49ers, the last of our best green landing spots for wide receivers. They only have Ricky Pearsall, really. I've thrown in these rookies that have been rotting away on the injured reserve and Jacob Cowing and Jordan Watkins. I don't really expect anything from those guys. They're former day 3 picks. But those are the next guys up for now. Maybe this team brings Juwan Jennings back. Maybe they bring Deebo Samuel back. I don't know. They're going to add something. They are in a pretty decent cap spot, $31 million to spend. So they could go free agency route. They could go draft route. They're going to add something. In the meantime, Ricky Pearsall is a pretty interesting buy low candidate, which is why he is on the thumbnail. Just purely even narrative driven. If you don't believe in Ricky Pearsall as a player, just narrative wise, think about what this depth chart's going to look like going into next year. You're going to have George Kittle, very good chance he starts on the PUP list. You've got McCaffrey, age 30. He's probably going to spend the whole offseason talking about how he needs a little bit less work. He needs to be preserved to stay healthy. You could have Pearsall as the de facto number one wide receiver, even if they do draft a rookie. I think that's going to be a player that people are interested in. And when you look under the hood a little bit at the games where Pearsall was healthy, he was pretty efficient on a per out basis. He had over 80 yards in the majority of his healthy games this year. If you understand how the PCL injury kind of lingers for a few weeks after returning, he's interesting. Do I think Jennings will move on? I don't really know. I don't know. They had like a weird kind of holdout situation before last season where he kind of bullied his way into a little bit of a bonus on his contract, but it wasn't a full-on extension, which is why he's hitting free agency. After that whole debacle, it's possible that he's just ready to move on and he thinks he's worth more money than the 49ers want to pay him. So I'm not really sure. Maybe the fact that Ayuk has gone totally AWOL changes things. Like they expected him to be back and they had to pay him a lot of money and now he's going to be gone. All his guarantees were voided. So maybe now they're like, okay, well, Juwan, you can come back now because Ayuk's gone. I don't really know. Could see it either way. But yeah, for whoever it is, it's a good spot. Brock Purdy is good. Kyle Shanahan is good. You want a wide receiver there. Seattle Seahawks would be next. In orange here is an okay spot. It's just JSN, really. Torrey Horton was interesting. Day 3 rookie. He ended up missing the rest of the year with a shin injury. He could come back and be a guy for sure. He's interesting to stash. Not guaranteed anything, though. Cooper Kupp is pretty washed. He still shows up now and then, but he's not really a threat. So a second wide receiver could absolutely muscle their way in here. The problem is twofold. It's the low passing volume of this offense, and it's Clint Kubiak leaving, right? That changes the calculus a little bit for this team. It's just another spot where, yes, there's opportunity, but it's less opportunity than it would look on the surface just because the total pass attempts are going to be lower. So it would have to be somebody that can really come in and consolidate a majority of the work outside of JSN. I don't know if they're going to find that player. We've got 8 teams left to get through. I've been kind of long-winded here. Let me get through these. We have a lot of teams that are pretty set already. So the Bears arguably have like one of the best young cores in the league. They have Rome. They have Burden. They have DJ Moore for now. I personally think DJ Moore will play for a different team in 2026. Other people don't think so. But regardless, they've got Rome and Burden. We don't need to add another relevant player to that mix. Stick to depth pieces only. Colston Loveland, one of the best up-and-coming tight ends in the league and in Dynasty. That team is set. Detroit Lions with Amon-Ra, Jameson Williams, and I suppose Isaac Tesla, if you want to mention him. Solid enough wide receiver room. Obviously, really good players there. Sam Laporta coming back from injury is going to be fine. So they're pretty locked in as well. Packers are crowded, just not a lot of... They don't really have any top-end talent in the wide receiver room. Christian Watson's the closest thing they've got, and he is good. Not necessarily like a fully rounded player that does everything, but he is a good wide receiver. Jaden Reed is, again, a good wide receiver out of the slot, good yak threat. We'll see about Matthew Golden. Pretty bad rookie season. Definitely goes into kind of a concerning bucket analytically, but he'll be back. And Dontavian Wicks is there. He'll always be there. So I put this at okay just because if somehow the Packers went against all of their typical moves and they actually got a good wide receiver, like an elite wide receiver on this team, I think that player could consolidate a lot of work from these other guys. I don't see that happening. I think it'll be pretty much this group. Maybe they bring back Dobbs, maybe they don't. But it's going to continue to be this wide receiver by committee, most likely. Tight end room. Hopefully Tucker Kraft is back and healthy sooner than later. He's a really, really good player. Vikings, outside of the quarterback situation, which is not good, they have Jefferson and Addison. That's more than enough in the wide receiver room to soak up most of the work. And then TJ Hawkinson is not a very good tight end anymore, I don't think, but he's there. He's a body. He takes up space. He runs routes. So not really a good place for any pass catchers. We'll see if McCarthy can develop and at least support the ones that are currently there, but I definitely have my doubts. That brings us to the NFC South to close things out. Falcons just have Drake London and Darnell Mooney at wide receiver. Darnell Mooney looked so bad last season. He did have the broken collarbone, I believe it was, and then other injuries that like nagged at him throughout the season. We'll see if he can bounce back, but this is probably a good landing spot for a wide receiver. Like somebody's going to end up there, and there is opportunity. If they bring back Kyle Pitts, then it becomes less of a good spot because Kyle Pitts kind of plays like a hybrid wide receiver type of role. But with London being the only real pass catcher there right now, real high volume pass catcher, has to be an appealing spot, even if I'm not very sold on Michael Penix. The Panthers, I would prefer if this just remained McMillan and Coker. They do have Xavier Legette for whatever that's worth, which is not much. I guess they have Jatavian Sanders. I don't know why I didn't put him on there. He should still be on his rookie deal. I'm not really interested in a tight end going to the Panthers. This is not a high volume passing game. Bryce Young is not a particularly good quarterback. Again, McMillan and Coker are more than capable of absorbing all of the fantasy goodness from this passing game. So I'd like to just keep it consolidated. I would not consider that a good spot. New Orleans Saints with Tyler Shuck. I should add, as it was mentioned earlier, Jalen Polk to this list here, because apparently he's a guy that still exists. You may have forgotten, but he was traded from the Patriots to the Saints despite having a season-ending injury. Kind of a weird move, especially for a wide receiver that was so bad as a rookie. But yes, he is on the Saints. They have Tyler Shuck, hopefully developing into year 2. They have Olave, and then they have Vele and Polk, and then they have Juwan Johnson. This is a fine spot. If they were to go wide receiver at 9, I would not love it for Olave. I mean, Olave would still like get his work, but like if you drop a Mekhi Lemon or a Carnell Tate into this situation, it's going to be worse for him when you're talking about Tyler Shuck here. It's not Joe Burrow. I would rather there not be an alpha wide receiver there for Olave's sake, but there is plenty of opportunity available. These other wide receivers are not threats to routes. They're not threats to targets. Juwan Johnson is really more of a product of the situation. He's kind of a net negative at tight end in the sense that he is undersized and doesn't really block or anything. So it kind of hurts your run game, and part of the reason why the Saints run game sucked so bad last year. So he can absolutely be usurped. He is an expendable player, even though he was decent for fantasy. So that's kind of how I see the Saints situation. And yeah, I mean, there's no harm in getting Polk thrown into deals. I don't really have much interest in him. He's probably on waivers in some leagues, but yeah, why not? Last team though is the Buccaneers. Emeka Egbuka, Chris Godwin, Jalen McMillan. We already mentioned Mike Evans. He's a free agent. It seems like he is open to going to another team, to a contender. We'll see. It's hard to know how valid any of these rumors are, but I could definitely see him moving on from the Bucs. And even if he does, move on, I wouldn't view this as a good spot for a wide receiver when you already have Egbuka there, hopefully building on what was overall a very promising rookie season. Chris Godwin, another year removed from that really bad ankle injury. He should be useful enough. Jalen McMillan, very solid wide receiver 3. So wide receiver depth chart is pretty filled out, even if they don't really have like a traditional X receiver. And then maybe they bring in some kind of sacrificial X receiver. I don't know. Tight end though, good enough landing spot. Without Kate Otten there, there's really nobody there. So maybe they re-sign Otten. Maybe they bring in some other player of that caliber that's kind of just a space maybe they bring in a David Njoku. I don't know. But it is a decent enough spot where there will be opportunity. That's kind of how the depth charts look right now. So those are the teams you want to see players. There's the teams you don't want to see players. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how some of these teams shape up. But I'm about ready to wrap this thing up, guys. Am I high on the Bucs offense going forward? I don't know. I feel like Baker Mayfield was obviously not 100% this year, but I've never necessarily believed that he was as good as some of the metrics and some of the box scores would indicate. They bring in Zach Robinson, I think, as the OC, which could definitely be better than what they had last year, but I don't know for sure if he's super sharp or anything. So I don't know. I don't think this is going to be like a top 5 offense again like it was 2 years ago, but it should be better than it was for most of last season. Maybe some kind of middle ground there. I don't know. I'm cautiously optimistic about Ibuka. I am crossing my fingers that Bucky Irving is allowed to touch the ball inside the 5-yard line. And I don't have a ton of interest in like everything else going on there from a dynasty standpoint, but yeah, we shall see. Guys, just so you know, we have the live startup draft Monday night. I'll have another video out next week. If I can get to it and finish the research I want to do, I would love to do kind of a 2026 rookie oriented video next week. No promises. Next week's member stream, though, will probably be at least partially about some of these new coaching hires and see what I can learn about some of these guys now that a lot of vacancies are getting filled. They're not all getting filled, but a lot of them have been filled. And we can see what we can figure out about some of these new hires and whether we like them for fantasy, what are their tendencies, how do they use running backs, how much do they like to pass, all that good stuff. So keep that in mind. I will absolutely talk to you all soon. Have a good rest of your night.